So the hot topic right now is if NA teams should go to Korea to boot camp. Well, let's present a list of pros and cons and murkies in between, and then offer some counterpoints and maybe solutions to what can be done on this matter, and then you can judge for yourself. So the pros of going to Korea are, first of all, the solo queue. You get lower ping, which means that everything that you practice in solo queue is going to be easy to translate to the stage, because the stage obviously plays online, super low ping. Same thing with the solo queue. You also have better players as well as more players, and what's important about that is that it gives you a chance to play against the unknown. So you play without expectations, and you have to think on the fly. What I mean by that is that if you play in North America, there's a set amount of players, especially in Challenger, Masters, whatever, that you already know. If you know against a guy that only plays Lee Sin, a guy that only plays Annie, a guy that only plays this, you already know all their patterns. You know exactly how they play, you know what they're trying to look for, you know their timings for roams, how good they are, etc. And you never get to really test your ability to think on the fly. Whereas if you play in Korea, you have such a variety of players that you've never seen before, that you have to really read into their movements and kind of figure out the map and exactly what they're trying to do to understand their gameplay and read their patterns. And that's something that's going to be easy to translate and a very useful skill for playing on the main stage, because when you play on the main stage, you're going to be playing against teams and players that you don't really have experience playing against except for watching their VOD. So you have to do a lot of just looking at how they play on the fly and identifying what they're trying to look for, how they actually play the matchup, and figure that out as you go, which is a very valuable skill. Also, everybody loves playing Korean solo queue and not NA solo queue, so there's that. You also get better scrim partners. You get to practice against NA, Europe, Korea, China, and Taiwan, and not only are the teams better and there's more of them to play, but just like solo queue, you also get to play against teams that you've never played against before, that all you've done before for your research is scouting and watching their VODs, watching their games from other regions. And that's exactly the same kind of scouting that you're going to be doing when you play against teams on the world stage. You've only seen their VODs, you don't really know anything about them, and that's very useful because just like the solo queue, understanding the patterns of a team and what they're trying to look for, their drafts and everything, when you do it on the fly, you train that ability, and then you can use that on the main stage and really figure that out, because ultimately it's all about how quickly you can think on your feet, and that's a huge part of this game right now. Also, it gives a chance for players to get out of the house and bond, and believe it or not, the Korean boot camp is a bonding experience. You get players traveling together for 12 hours, rooming in quarters that they never had before, talking together. When they go out for food, you get to have different matches or different pairs of players together and kind of talk to each other, and you bond together. And as a team game, bonding and team bonding and getting along with your team is quite important. So that also helps and adds to that experience, because you can all be there, you try hard together, and it's nice. And by that same notion, being out of the house and being in Korea makes the practice environment seem a lot more try hard. It's like a hyperbolic time chamber. Everybody's there. You know exactly what you're there for. It's go time, and you know that your teammates are going to be giving it that 100%, and that makes you want to give yourself 100%, and it makes practice more effective, and you feel better about it because it's like the final stretch. And by the same idea that you get to play against better players in solo queue, there's more players, better scrim partners, you also get to speak with better players that might have different perceptions on the game and on matchups. So for example, I mean, we all know that players get friendly, right? It's like, oh, I'm a huge fan of you. I'm a huge fan of you. What do you know about this matchup? I want to learn about this one. Can you teach me about this one? And just as an example, we'll use NA's Victor versus Zillion. So in NA, I know that for a while it was Zillion was considered like a soft counter to Victor, because I mean, I don't know exactly the notions why, I don't remember, it was a while ago, but people like to pick Victor into Zillion. Remember the first game of Summer, Immortals versus TSM, where TSM picked Zillion into Victor. They won with it. Bam, it did really well. Victor or Zillion can kill Victor pretty easily. The laning phase is fine, etc. Well, had you gotten the opportunity to talk to somebody like Crown and ask them, hey, what do you think about Victor versus Zillion? He might tell you, oh, Victor is greater than everything, and perhaps show you why. And if you get that chance of being told why, then maybe you get your mind blown, like, whoa, I've been seeing Victor completely different now. Shit's so mathematical now. I should have been doing this right. I should have been doing this instead. Okay, I can see how somebody can be so good at this champion. I've been viewing it all wrong. And that helps you become a better player, and always getting new perspectives when you approaching an international event is a huge benefit. It's also that the practice environment is easier to moderate and regulate for the staff. So they can see who's playing really hard. They can see how the scrims are going all the time. They can see pretty much everything, how the players are feeling, what the food is like. It's super detailed and finite, and that gives, I guess, the staff, the owners, a better sense of how the team is going to do, what they need to address to improve, and that's nice. And now let's move on to the cons. Well, let me tell you from now, these cons are relatively weak. The first con is that travel can take its toll on players, right? Being in the gaming house doesn't make you them all the time, doesn't make you the best fit person to be traveling across the globe. And inevitably, you are going to suffer from jet lag. I mean, the average length of a Korean boot camp is like 2 weeks. So then, going there, experiencing jet lag, by the time you're done, since the body takes about 2 weeks to get rid of that jet lag completely of such a massive time zone difference, when you leave Korea and you go to the next place, you're gonna be having some jet lag as well. It's not to say that the people that are coming out and the teams that are coming out of that time zone are not going to suffer from jet lag, but it might be a little bit rougher since you were there experiencing it and then coming back again. So it can happen. It's not to say that this is such a big deal, but it's definitely something, especially because teams usually tend to crunch a little bit, like they cut it quite close when the tournament begins and when they land. And that just has to do with how quickly or how in the time in between the season ends and the season and the Worlds begins. So it happens. The other one, which I think is a little understated, is that not all the players like to sit well with Korean food. Not all the players like Korean food. Not all the players like spicy. Maybe they're allergic to seafood. If they, Korea does like seafood a lot, although there's tons of options against it. And I'm personally a huge fan of Korean food, but maybe they don't like it. And that can be hard because finding American food in Korea every day may be difficult for 2 weeks straight, and players might get used to it. You hear stories of NA teams just only eating McDonald's, which is, I mean, please don't do that. But regardless, that does happen. And, it does affect your psyche when you're having a poor diet or you're having a complete diet overhaul. The other notion is that it's expensive. Tickets for the staff, food, place to stay, computers, and miscellaneous can be a bit of a steep price, but to be honest, nowadays teams are way bigger than they were before, and some of the trips are getting sponsored, so it's really not that big a deal, and I don't think that next year it's really going to be anything to complain about or even mention. And the final thing is that in NA, like the pro that you have going to Korea, you have the con of having stale scrim partners. You're playing against teams that you know how they work, you know what they do, you know how good their players are, and you can judge them among that, and you're not going to be punished by the things that you haven't been punished all year long. Therefore, your practice is going to be much harder to achieve. That's not to say that against a weaker team and through VOD watching, you won't be able to achieve a level of expertise and mastery in the game that better regions have, but it's nearly impossible. And frankly, I haven't seen anybody really achieve that. So I'm going to throw that one out the window. The scrim partners in there are really not going to be that good. And then finally, let's go into some of the murky ground thing, the murky water ones, which is if you stay in an A, you get to, or if you stay isolated, you get to keep your strategies hidden if that's something that you want. And it's not really that great of a thing because, as I mentioned before, you're not going to get punished by things that you should normally get punished by. but you also get to keep things hidden. And if you're going to try to beat somebody that's better at you, why not hit him with cheese, right? But to be honest, if you can cheese your way, if you can prepare enough cheese to win a fucking World Cup, then I mean, you have a talent. There is a talent for that, absolutely. Of course, incredibly unlikely. And then the other thing that I think should be addressed is the whole concept of sharing information and sharing scrims and everything. And while you hear rumors about all this stuff, you gotta go with the whole innocent until proven guilty for everybody. I don't think that there's any current evidence to indicate any of that. The one thing that does happen that is inevitable because it is impossible to regulate a scrim environment, right? There's no sister teams, there is no moderation inside those areas, is players speak to each other. And it's not like players share strategies with themselves. It's more like, hey, we just scrimmed X team. Their jungler is pretty damn good. You're like, really? The jungler's going off. Like, that's interesting. Jungler's going off. And then maybe the other team's like, okay, let's keep an eye out on this jungler. And then they watch his solo queue games like, this guy's pretty good. Yeah, maybe we should keep a closer eye on him and avoid everybody else. All right, game plan is we're gonna camp. We're gonna make sure that we put all our focus into the jungler. And I mean, I don't think that's really that big of a deal. I think that a team should be able to respond to react to all those things, and if that's enough to beat you, then you probably don't deserve to win a World Cup or anything. So I really don't think that's a problem. It happens. It's bound to happen at all times, and frankly, it's something that's barely even worth worrying and fuzzing about. If evidence comes up of actual shared scrims, now that's a problem, but until that happens, forget about it. So ultimately, teams are going to have a very difficult time improving to the level of the better region, which is Korea, staying in North America. So how can they achieve that level while at the same time staying in an A? Well, the solution is simple. Bring the Korean teams to an A. Great. All right. That's what we'll do. But how can we do that? Well, Korea maybe would come to North America if they believed that North America was a region better than them. I don't think there's a single Korean that believes that. So that's not going to happen, right? That's thrown right out the window. That's a fantasy that honestly, even if you dream that, you'd probably get slapped by somebody in your dream like, wake the fuck up. That's not true, right? That's not going to happen. So what's another way that you could do it? Well, you could pay them. You could pay the teams to come to Korea, to come to North America and practice there, practice with them. Okay, so how much would it cost to probably bring a Korean team? And what would it be from their point of view? Well, they would be going to a region that is weaker. They would be getting completely out of their comfort zone for absolutely no reason. They would be changing their food completely. They would be having a way shittier solo queue experience. They would feel maybe homesick because they'll probably have to go to wherever World's location is after that. And just to reiterate, the scrim partners are going to be way worse and way less. So you'd have to pay them a shitload of money to do that. And in the end, that probably still won't matter. Because they could just stay in Korea and say, you know what, we probably have a better chance of making more money if we just win Worlds, if we just place highly on Worlds anyways. So you're going to have to top that pool. And now that the prize pool is incremented, that's even more money. You're not going to get the Korean teams to come to an A. So your best bet is probably to get teams from like the wildcard region and maybe Europe, but by the same notion that NAC is going to Korea, Europe C is going to Korea as well. So it's unlikely to happen. So for now, I do think that the option still remains to most likely have to go to Korea unless we see a significant change in the skill of North America. But man, you know, I wish we could pinpoint it, and it just feels like it's like stage jitters or something, because when they play well, but when they play bad, man, it looks like shit. Well, I hope this helped and kind of shed light on the whole debate. And I'll see you guys later.